recognize that there is that fully virtual option. We need to know whether or not you would expect to have your child be fully virtual. In addition, we are going to ask about transportation, and there are some other pieces of information that we are going to need for planning purposes for the school year. So know that I'll be sending a letter out in the future. One coming this Friday about the A Day, B Day announcement, but additional information will be asked of parents, in addition to accommodations that may be needed for your children to attend school. As I mentioned several times during the presentation, the latest from the Department of Education allows parents to opt for a fully remote instructional program, but this is something that we have to track and monitor very closely as a district based off of the guidance we got from the Department of Education. Because of that, we're going to be using our Genesis student information system to manage this and ask parents whether or not their child will be fully remote for the fall. Further details will come in another letter from me regarding this. So our timeline moving forward, by this Friday, parents will be notified if they are A Day or B Day. We are also able to give you some options for childcare through our YMCA. That information will also be in the letter. This plan right now, as well as what I shared with the board today, is our first, I don't know if I would call it a draft, but will be our first submission to the Department of Education. However, the DOE has not released their final checklist that's required to go through before we approve and submit the plan. So on the August 18th board meeting, I anticipate having a final plan with checklist items from the Department of Education for the board to approve. August 19th, I plan on sending the final plan to the county office. And throughout August and September, we've got additional staff trainings. We'll be doing some virtual orientation meetings at the school buildings. We'll be developing some parent tutorials and training, and then we'll be implementing our plan to ensure that we are Reddington ready for the school year. So you may be wondering what hybrid learning looks like. We have a demonstration. So Mr. Belsky, if you can hear me, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you so that the parents and the Board of Education can see what our remote virtual instruction looks like.
Hi, Dr. Hart, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jim.
Okay.
So you'll see, some of you may, if you're on the computer, may be able to see Jim. If you click the three dots in your bottom right-hand corner and change the layout to the sidebar layout or spotlight layout, you'll be able to see Jim a little bit larger.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. Hi, everyone.
Sure.
So I just wanted to go through and demonstrate some of the technology that we have in district that we're planning to use for remote hybrid learning, synchronous learning. In this example right now, I'm using a Chromebook that we have in school, stationed in the classroom, facing a whiteboard, using the camera and built-in mic to the Chromebook. On the whiteboard, I have a lesson that I brought up that's being run over using our Epson whiteboard and a computer. If I have kids in the classroom, obviously they'll be able to see this, but also the kids at home that are tuned into the Google Meet would be able to see and hear what I'm doing as well. Going over to the Epson whiteboard, I could talk about a particular lesson. I can also draw on the board. Would be able to use any annotation tool that I wanted to help as part of that lesson. I could alternate and go back to controlling the whiteboard. I could switch a lesson. So the idea would be that we would have a number of lessons already up, ready to go. Let's say we wanted to do a presentation. I could bring up a presentation, show and talk to the students about the presentation. I can continue to annotate over this. And then maybe switch back to another lesson. Essentially, anything on the computer can be streamed out to the students. In this scenario, simply using a Chromebook, camera, and mic. what I wanted to show next was another option teachers would have for live synchronous streaming. And in this example, I'm going to actually turn off the camera on the Chromebook and mic and pop up over on another computer that's actually running the whiteboard.
Thanks, Jim.
No worries.
Yep, no problem. So just a reminder, if those of you who are watching, remember if you hit those 3 dots in your bottom right-hand corner and change your layout to sidebar or spotlight view, you'll be able to see Jim's demonstration a little bit larger.
Hi, everyone. All right, so I jumped over to the master computer, and this is actually the computer that's connected to the whiteboard, the Epson projector. So in this example, teachers have the option of, let's say we don't want to use the video camera. It's going to be more about the lesson. The teachers could present their entire desktop to the student. Camera is not used in this example, but you can hear me. You can also see me. I can go back and annotate on the board, and this would be streamed back to the students at home, as well as exactly what is being shown to the students in the classroom. I could go into a whiteboard mode where I could simply write on the board. And then switch back to control the whiteboard. Let's say we had, let's say we wanted to use a document camera that's in the classroom. That can also be shown as well. So we have a document camera set up. I have a book and a document camera. I would be able to annotate here as well. So the idea with both of these scenarios are just showing some options that teachers would be able to utilize to both teach in class and stream at home using Google Meet. You could also use Zoom as well to essentially do exactly the same thing, simply to present what's on the desktop or the whiteboard back to the students. And again, this is all existing technology. We are looking at purchasing Bluetooth headsets for teachers that want some additional sound capability. But right now I'm talking through the built-in mic, which tends to work pretty well.
And Jim, do you have your mask with you also?
I do. Yep.
Okay. So recognize that, Jim has, I think, the air conditioner probably running over there at RMS, and we'll put on a mask in a moment because we recognize that there'll be some ancillary noise in the background. But we were able to hear Jim okay when he did his demo yesterday.
Okay, so now I do have my mask on, and I'm talking close to the screen. So I'll move away a little bit. I'm going to stop presenting. Go back to the video camera. And I'll step away. I'm talking on the other side of the whiteboard.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks for the demonstration. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So members of the Board of Education, that concludes my overview of our plan for reopening. So there's the plan that you have has some more details in it, written details in it, but I will, now that we've done our presentation as well as the demo, I'll open up for questions from members of the Board of Education.
I wanted to reiterate, so for days throughout the entire school year, not just September, when we have a day off at some point during the week, then we will compress that Wednesday virtual day so that there's a more even split between those A's and B days.
That's correct. Yep, our goal would be to try to make up the days missed so that we can have a more even split on A and B day.
this is Eric. I'd like for us to still consider the possibility of testing the temperature of the students as they get on the buses. I think that's let's just leave that in the mix as a possibility. I'd also like to suggest that all the hand sanitizer that's been purchased, it be checked against the FDA list of sanitizers that have been recalled. There was some that came out that had methanol in them, which is toxic. So do please make that check.
Thanks, Eric. I know that we talked extensively last time about the temperature checks. And there's a lot of strong recommendations from the CDC about not doing widespread temperature checks. I mean, I do have some concerns and reservations about doing it prior to boarding a bus. So it is concerning, but nonetheless, Eric, all of this is, any point and counterpoint that somebody brings up will certainly be given due consideration and thought, just to ensure that we're doing the best that we possibly can and to think things through. So, other questions from the Board of Ed? Okay. Mrs. Shin, that concludes my superintendent's report. And we're going to come right back to it because once we open up to the public, I'll address some questions there too.
I'm sure you will.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hart. We are now open to the public and we're limited to action items that are on the agenda. So we have a whole list of them typed into the comment section. So I'm going to mute myself for these.
Would you like me, Dr. Hart, to read through them one at a time?
Robin, if you could help me, I don't know if there's anything that's repeated that I can try to, kind of bundle into an answer.
Yeah, I was going to try and kind of go through them, and if you had answered it, then I was going to just go to the one following it.
Okay.
So there's several questions about handling our IEP kids who want to go to full remote instruction. I guess particularly one particularly focused on the younger kids, the kindergartners.
Okay. So one of the requirements, I'll answer it this way. First, one of the requirements from the Department of Education about students who go fully remote is that we are going to be required to provide services remotely that would mirror the services that students with IEPs would have in the classroom if they were here in person. So if you have a student that has an IEP who requires speech therapy and pull-out resource room or something along those lines, the student would receive those services, but rather receive them remotely. Because we have to provide for that equivalent program. We would adhere to what is in the student's IEP, but we would do it all remotely. If those families that have a child who has an IEP and have a specific concern about either a related service or a program or access to a teacher or some therapy that perhaps that child would require, I would encourage you to contact your case manager or Mrs. Beagle in the pupil services office. And if there are specific accommodations that we need to make, we'll investigate. We'll investigate those and we'll do our best to try to accommodate certain requests. But just know that our remote program, according to the state, has to mirror closely our in-person program.
Several questions about recess and what we think that will look like. Will playgrounds be used? Are they able to play with people? Do they need to maintain distance? Will they be wearing masks, etc.?
Yes. So our student focus group was really creative in meeting with the principals, and they came up with a whole list of games that were no contact fun games that they could play outdoors at recess that would allow them to continue to have socially distant experiences, but still be able to play during recess. Right now, when we're outdoors, as long as we're 6 feet apart, we don't have to wear masks. I think being outdoors is a perfect opportunity as long as we're 6 feet apart to take that mask break during the day and allow children to play, walk around, run, as long as they maintain social distancing. They'll be monitored by adults, and should any rules or regulations change, we can certainly keep recess in mind and keep that updated. But right now we're looking at no contact games, being 6 feet apart, without wearing masks, or within 6 feet having to wear masks, but being able to have a fun recess outdoor time, because outdoors are certainly encouraged by the Department of Education.
If any additional information could be given on mask breaks when kids are in the classroom.
Mask breaks are going to be the discretion of the teacher. In order to allow for the masks to come off of students, students must be 6 feet apart. I imagine that there'd be times during the academic day where the teacher would sit at her desk and say, everybody, let's take a 5-minute break while you're doing your independent work. You can remove your mask if you'd like. As long as students are 6 feet apart, that would be a mask break. There are some classrooms where that may not happen as often, but we recognize the developmental nature of wearing masks and how important, particularly for younger children, it might be to take those breaks throughout the day. But the teacher, it would be at the teacher's discretion and during instructional time where students were 6 feet apart, as long as it was safe.
How do we intend on addressing security with more open windows and more open doors?
We would have staff posted at those doors when students enter and exit. Once students are in the building, all doors will be locked as ordinary. We'll certainly encourage passive airflow with windows open too. It will just require more vigilance by our staff. But the only time the doors will be open will be arrival and dismissal, and we will have staff members posted at those doors.
For the visual signs and symptoms of COVID that we were in the plan, at what point would a prompt be made to send a child home, especially if there's no fever? What other symptoms would actually be a part of the protocol to send a child home?
There's a list of symptoms that I put in the document, and let me grab it. I'm sure that we're all becoming familiar with the signs and symptoms. If any child is presenting with signs or symptoms, they would be sent to the nurse's office first for an assessment from the nurse, because the nurse is the medical professional. And the nurse would be looking for specific signs and symptoms and doing her assessment. Based off of her assessment, she would then be making a recommendation to send a child or a staff member home. The signs and symptoms that we all should be recognizing are things like a fever of 100 or greater, a cough, shortness of breath, chills, repeated shaking with the chills, muscle pain, headache, sore throat, a new loss of taste or smell, fatigue, congestion or a runny nose, nausea or vomiting, and diarrhea. And the nurses are up to date on all of those signs and symptoms so that the nurses can make an assessment about whether or not someone needs to go home.
Okay, on virtual days, how will students be monitored and questions answered? Somebody asked about additional staff in classrooms to address those, if that's going to be a possibility.
Certainly. So we're fortunate that we have some classrooms where there may be an aide assigned. There are some classrooms where there may be a co-teaching model where there are 2 teachers in the classroom. So there are often classrooms that have more than 1 adult, which is a great benefit. So that's possible. We're not looking at hiring any additional staff, but rather we're looking at using the staff that we have in order to provide that environment if it's available. But chances are that it would be a teacher alone in a classroom, perhaps, that would be teaching both simultaneously remotely as well as the students in class. And this is going to be a new management style for the teacher. But remember, if a child is remote, the child will really be participating in that direct instruction of a lesson. Once that direct instruction or modeling is over, good instructional practice has a check for understanding. Students that are remote, students that are in class, the teacher will do that. And after that, there will be a portion of the lesson that students who are at home learning remotely will be expected to complete work independently. recognizing though that those students may need a little bit of additional assistance at some time in the future. That additional assistance will happen on Wednesdays during the full remote days, where they would be able to meet with their teacher either during office hours or during instructional time for small group check-ins. And those students would also have an opportunity during the rotation to be back in the classroom. So if they're an A-day child and they are, or I'm sorry, if they're a B-day child and they're learning remotely on Monday and Tuesday, let's not forget that by Thursday, they'll be back in the classroom with only a group of another 8, 9, 10 students, and the teacher can give some additional assistance to the child then. But I want to make it clear there's going to be an expectation that remote learners will have to have a level of independence with some of their work during the academic day to do things more asynchronously.
Students who opt for the 100% remote option, are they just going to follow that home schedule daily?
Yes, so they'll follow the same schedule, and they'll know those blue boxes, if you will. They'll know those blue times where they'll have to log into the teacher's lessons. And then let's not forget that we also have those Wednesdays where those fully remote students will be able to meet with their teachers in more small groups.
Will students be changing classrooms, or are teachers going to come to them?
In the elementary buildings, teachers are going to be coming to classrooms. The special teachers are coming to classrooms. Mixing will occur at the middle school, although we're doing our best to try to cohort students the way student schedules, as well as our academic levels like honors, English language arts, and our varying levels of math are going to require students to mix periodically throughout the day. Mrs. Moffitt and I know Mrs. Moffitt is still working on scheduling. We're going to do our best to try to keep, at least if students are moving, we're going to try to keep that same cohort of students together for chunks of their day, but it's likely not going to be all day. So there will be mixing at the middle school. But remember, we're talking about half of the student population being there on any given day.
Will we be able to share a list of virtual families so that they can connect with each other?
I don't know if I would be able to share that. I don't have the answer to that question. I believe that would be a personal family choice, and I don't know if it would be up to the district to share that information. So likely no, but I don't have a solid no on that.
Can the virtual attending kindergarten parents schedule an appointment with teachers on that the days of the 3rd and 4th as well?
Let me get back to you on that. I'll follow up on that one. If it's a fully virtual family coming into the building, right? That's the question.
Yeah, it looks like early on in the year, it looks like set stuff up for the year.
Got it. I'll follow up on that.
Aftercare, do we have any information on aftercare?
Yeah, our facilities are going to be closed for all outside groups with the exception of the YMCA. The Y is going to follow and adhere to guidelines and will be offering aftercare, and we are trying to work with them to provide some sort of either offsite or on-site care during the A-day, B-day schedule, so that A-day students might have an option, parents might have an option for care at the Y on B days.
What was the rationale behind keeping a full day instead of a half day with no lunch, shorter time for masks, less bathroom visits, etc.?
Instruction. I guess that's, we're trying to balance a couple of things. We certainly recognize health and safety is of critical importance, but we also are trying to maintain integrity to an instructional day. So a full day was seen as a positive option because it gives us more instructional time.
Do we have any news on clubs, activities, or sports and their offerings?
The news that I have right now, I met with superintendents today regarding athletics. There's a delay in the start of the fall season, and this is just new. A delay in the start of the fall season likely will not start until mid or late September, if it starts at all. I know that many districts are opting out of full athletics completely. So right now, our priority has been opening schools safely, and athletics will come later on as schools open in the fall.
Do we have a timeline as to when families need to say whether they're going virtual or not?
I will provide that timeline in my communication when we talk about parents having to announce whether or not they're going virtual, but we do need to plan. So I think the timeline would, the timeline is going to be relatively soon so that we can be more diligent about our planning. I will put the firm date in my communication to families, but I guess as a rule of thumb, I would say start thinking about it and start thinking about having to make your decision within the next 2 weeks or so.
Will students be given any resources such as workbooks to work independently so that their screen time is more limited?
That's going to depend on the child's grade level, the type of workbooks that will be given out or print materials that will be given out. And we're going to be encouraging mostly online activities and online handouts through Google Classroom just to reduce the exchange of paper materials. So it's going to depend on the grade level. If ordinarily children get workbooks, they may very well get workbooks. If they get virtual workbooks, that's also a possibility too. I know that younger students often require paper pencil-like activities. So they will still continue to have those, but remember, we're going to continue to encourage more online use just to reduce the exchange of papers.
If a parent chooses to drive their child to school, can they switch later in the year? And actually the same for virtual. If they choose virtual, can they choose to come back to school later on?
Yes, we'll plan to have seats on buses as well as have seats for students in classrooms. There may be a delay though, and that will be communicated. That's part of the requirements from the Department of Education when parents opt to do fully virtual or not take the bus. Once we roll out that final communication, we'll let you know what the timeline will be for return to school if necessary. And it might mean that we ask you to commit to a month of your child being fully virtual or not on the bus, or a marking period.
There are several questions regarding like a schedule, what a typical schedule would look like. I can say go back to the presentation. There was an outline of like the particular timeline of when virtual would be taking place. There's small mini lessons followed by independent practice. So maybe put that up real quick so that we can see that.
I'll do that. All right, let me go back to this. Let me go back to the presentation. Let me share this real quick. Okay, so here's, so the beginning of each lesson is going to begin with some kind of teacher instruction or teacher modeling or teacher directed skills. And that's on the far left-hand column. So if you can imagine, like what Jim Belsky just showed you, a teacher would be in her classroom, broadcasting her screen, walking students through a particular concept, solving multi-step, math equations or something like that. Students in class would be sitting there watching the whiteboard in class, watching the teacher do it as they ordinarily would. Students at home would be logged in just like we were, watching the whiteboard, watching the teacher do it as she ordinarily would, simultaneously. And then, like I said before, students then at home are going to do some sort of independent practice, where students in school will have practice, but will have practice with the teacher there in assistance guiding them. And remember, it'll switch when we switch A days and B days. Then I'll flip over to this slide. I think once the schedule comes out, right, once the final schedules are done for each grade level and the middle school, think about, the beginning of a math lesson is going to start at 8:30 in the morning. So all students, whether you're home or in school at 8:30 in the morning, will be watching a live math lesson. Students in school will be watching it in front of the teacher. students at home will be watching it virtually. There will be breaks throughout the day, especially for the students at home. They'll have a lot more independent, autonomous work, where students in class will go through a relatively ordinary school day. And I say relatively ordinary, it's not going to look like it has in the past. But they're going to go through their school day much more in a traditional fashion. Whereas the students at home are going to be logging in, let's say 4 or 5 times a day to receive that direct instruction for those 15, 20-minute, 30-minute blocks of time.
Dr. Hart, since that slide is up right now, is that
Sure.
the schedule, or are we going to keep to our times that we've had in the past?
Yeah. So there's a lot of moving parts with arrival and dismissal that we're looking at right now. So there might be some shifts in the schedule. I think I'm answering your question, Anna. Let me know if I'm not. So basically you're saying like first period at RMS starts at a specific time. Will first period at RMS be that specific time? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that's what I'm asking. Are they going to be close to what we're accustomed to, or are they going to look like this sample one with a start of 8:30?
Yeah, so this is more of an elementary schedule. RMS is going to look much more closely to what you're used to for RMS, a 9-period day.
So then Hallenbrook will follow suit, and then White House and Three Bridges should be similar to their schedules.
Right, right.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, so what you're similar, and I'll use the word similar.
Yeah.
It's there's going to be some fluctuation just because there are a lot of moving parts with arrival and dismissal. So I've been talking with the principals looking at scheduling and arrival and dismissal, and there might be some fluctuations.
I think everyone can handle fluctuations if we have a general idea that we're going to try to go close. So
And then
thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll just point out for Wednesdays, remember Wednesdays are fully virtual and remote. So your students will have to get used to 2 schedules, full day schedule and then Wednesday schedule, which is fully virtual and remote. The nice thing about that Wednesday schedule is it's developed. That would be the schedule that we would use if we have to pivot to fully remote instruction because of another government shutdown, or because of quarantine, or because of a school shutdown, because of a positive case. So it's going to be really important that once the schedules are out, that your children get used to 2 instructional schedules, one being the full day and then the other one being that Wednesday schedule. And as long as we can get used to that Wednesday early dismissal schedule is going to be what's used if we go fully virtual again. For the elementary buildings, it may look a lot like this, but just be condensed. It'll all be morning. Maybe it'd be 8:30, but would end at like noon. And then the afternoon would be used for office hours or additional help if students needed it. At RMS, talking to Mrs. Moffat, I think it would be like 9 30-minute periods where students would be able to log in. And then they would have teachers would have office hours in the afternoons, or students could get extra help then.
So our start time will be the same on Wednesdays as it is on the other days. But
Yeah,
our end time is just different on Wednesdays. As long as our start time all 5 days is the same, I think that's a big question.
Yeah. So, remember, this goes back to our philosophy of wanting to have a predictable schedule for students, and setting the tone and setting the expectation at the beginning of the year is going to be a challenge, and I recognize that. But once students get in the hang of a schedule, it's important that they maintain it, and they'll know it and they'll adjust to it. I think that but your point is well taken. Everybody's going to have to know that this is when we're going to start our school day. It may end a little bit differently depending on whether it's a full day or an early dismissal day, but this is what our schedule is going to be. So at least it's predictable. We know what time we have to be up and in front of the computer or at school in order to get our instruction for the day.
All right. Will teachers be covering their normal curriculum?
The curriculum supervisors are currently working on, I guess the best word is compacting the curriculum, or identifying the major teaching points in the curriculum, so that the teachers will be able to streamline instruction to hit the most critical, important points that are supported by the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. So it will not look like it has in the past. It'll be much more condensed.
can teachers request, can parents request IEP evaluations this year?
Yeah, so we've started this summer, we've started doing evaluations for those requests that we got in the spring using PPE and other guidelines set forth by the state. So individual evaluations for students who are potentially eligible for special education services will occur and will occur with protections.
This is specific, and I'm not sure I quite understand it. If a remote student isn't learning from home and are at a child care center like a Y, how many students will be in their class? Will they be getting appropriate help to complete their work?
So I think that's really up to the Y. I would say if your child is learning remotely but not at home, and they're at a daycare center, I would suggest that they go there with earbuds or AirPods and so that they can listen through their headphones. And I don't know the daycare centers that you're talking about particularly. I think that they would have their own reduced capacity to maintain 6-foot distance. So I don't know what their capacities are. Like I said, we're currently investigating using one of our school buildings, one room in one of our school buildings for a potential Y daycare center. And we would look to have the same protocol, space students apart, 6 feet, have them in a gym or something like that. And if we can only fit 40, to have them 6 feet apart, that's what we would do. They would have their headsets in, they would have their computer in front of them, and they would be there for the day.
Will it be recommended that twins be placed in the same class, or is it up to parents to decide?
I would contact your building principal regarding that specific question and have that discussion with your building principal. We have some discretion there.
Will virtual lessons be recorded so that they can be gone back to if something is missed?
So as of right now, we're in conversations that we have talked with our teachers about. As of right now, we want students to follow that predictable schedule so that they would be live for those meetings. I don't anticipate that they'll be recorded as of right now, but
will protocols for when students and staff get sick be shared? What are the triggers to close down a schoolroom or school, and what will instruction look like at that point for that classroom?
Right. So that was part of my meeting this morning with the Department of Health. Was in a meeting with the superintendents this morning, and we got in the actual plan, there's a flow chart that's there right now about how to handle certain cases. I'll say this, know that a potential positive case may mean a short-term closure, 2 days so the Department of Health can investigate, but a positive case would likely mean a quarantine for 14 days of at least that class and or other students that came in contact with that particular student or that staff member. The chart that I'm talking about was shared at a meeting today from the Department of Health and will be placed into the final plan. I just have to update the final plan, so it will be shared, yes.
What about having parent volunteers in schools? Will it be allowed?
We're going to limit the visitors in our building unless they have an appointment. So I would, if there are parent volunteers that come in for one thing or another, that's going to be something that the building principals and I will work on a case-by-case basis.
Will you be moving equipment within the classroom so that teachers will be able to maintain 6 feet of distance, since many of our rooms are not physically set up to facilitate this kind of movement, and use the equipment available in the room?
Yes, so right now our facilities department has been going around the buildings identifying spacing the desks 6 feet apart and identifying furniture that may need to be removed in order to set up that classroom to be 6 feet apart.
Is there any talk about our younger students and keeping them engaged in online work? Are the platforms different at the elementary school than they would be at the middle school, for instance?
Yeah, we're asking the teachers all to use Google Classroom as their platform. Once Google Classroom is the platform, there's a different types of online tools that can be used within Google Classroom where the teacher can post links. There are some that are better for younger students than others. Our curriculum office staff have been identifying some of those tools and have looked at purchasing licenses so that we can use a variety of tools, especially with our younger learners that may need different tools within Google Classroom to remain engaged.
Has there been a lot of work over the summer making sure that our technology works? Many of the smart boards were not working last year.
All of Reddington Middle School got a refresh of the new Epson iProject. So they're all brand new at Reddington Middle School. The technology department is going through the elementary schools to ensure that all of the technology works in the elementaries.
A general comment about our planning, nice job of planning. I do feel that the teachers will be overworked. I'm hoping that they are receiving extra support that they need. So there's a little hand raise up for our teachers.
Yeah. We know. We know. I met with the teachers yesterday, and we are planning on supporting them in every way possible. This is a lot of information for our school community right now. I recognize that in a very difficult time for our community and our country. So there's recognition that this is going to be a challenge, and that supports are out there.
How will temperature form be filled out if someone other than the parents with no access to Genesis is in charge of getting them on the bus?
I would say to either we can set up an account for that individual to have access to Genesis, or you could share your account information to Genesis. Like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, Genesis is the preferred method because it is our student information system and all the data can be kept in there so that we can monitor it more closely. In addition, it allows us to much more quickly compare who filled out the form and from whom we received it each day to our attendance roster so that we can ensure that we follow up and find the students that maybe didn't get a temperature check that morning to make sure that we do it before they arrive in the building.
Any thoughts on having class time outside as much as possible? Same with lunch, weather permitting.
Yes, weather permitting. We've talked about, I was just talking to the principals today. Like I said, we met with the teachers yesterday about outdoor classrooms, outdoor spaces that can be used, especially for the students that are in school that day. When the teacher, remember, there's going to be portions of the day where the teacher is going to need the smartboard and her technology, but the periods throughout the day where she doesn't need that technology, we would encourage teachers to bring students outside. We're looking into options for lunch so that we can encourage outdoor seating during lunch times also. Remember, we're going to have such limited capacity in our cafeterias anyway. You know, it'll only be 30 or 40 kids, that if we can bring those students outside, even sitting on the grass, or, you know, one student to a picnic table to keep students outside as much as possible. But yes, we would certainly encourage that.
What will paraprofessional support look like in a socially distanced classroom and for virtual learners?
We have, remember, everybody's got a mask. Everybody is 6 feet apart by and large, and certainly when they're not 6 feet apart, they have to have their mask on. We have purchased face shields, gloves, plexiglass barriers, and we're in the process of purchasing more plexiglass barriers for more of these times where there might need to be some closer contact in intimate settings, or a paraprofessional giving one-on-one support. So we would still encourage that, but it would likely occur through some sort of barrier, masked, maybe even with a face shield on.
What is the maximum number of students allowed in a cohort?
Like in a classroom? Is that the question?
I know there's different terminology that's kind of going around for that. So I think they're talking about, like, we said we'd kind of cohort them so that, for instance, the honors English kids might be going to the honors math class, going to the honors science class. So they'd be in the same group of kids.
So remember, so I'll say this again, you're likely going to have to mix to some extent, especially at the middle school, but we're going to reduce it as much as possible. Class sizes are approximately 10 to 12, and that's going to depend on how many parents opt for the fully virtual option. But class sizes will be approximately 10 to 12. So if we can keep 10 to 12 students together for the first 3-4 periods of their academic day, that's going to be our attempt. So that would be the size of the cohort of that class. Same thing at the elementary buildings. You know, if you have Mrs. Smith for second grade, your class, your cohort will be those 10 to 12 students that are with you during the day.
What PPE can every teacher expect to be provided by the district?
We have gloves, we have face shields for every teacher, we have hand sanitizer, and we will have so we are working right now, based off of my meeting with the teachers yesterday, we are working on ordering more plexiglass barriers. We ordered them initially for small group settings, like the counselor's office, intervention classroom, speech therapy rooms. Right now, we're looking at ordering one for every teacher's desk so that she could have an individual conference with students.
Specifically about the half-day Wednesday schedule, seem to have about 90 minutes of teacher-led instruction for students on their remote days. Is that representative of the amount of time that we should expect? But I think you answered that. It might shift, like to an earlier start.
Yeah, we have to be somewhat flexible about the amount of live instruction that happens on that particular day, because it may depend on the lesson. It may depend on the level of teacher support that's needed. You know, we're very conscientious of balancing the amount of time that students spend in front of a computer watching a lesson, and balancing that with independent work and other activities that we expect students to do. But it's going to fluctuate a little bit.
Are we going to be a little more open to requests for kids to be grouped together? Reasons might be reduced exposure to additional population or families that are working together for childcare purposes.
So there are a lot of moving parts to this schedule, right? So remember, we're trying to group families together. We're trying to group students together. We're trying to do it on an A day, B day rotation. I would say if you have a specific request, that you should reach out to your building principal, or you should wait and see what your A day, B day assignment might be, and then reach out to the building principal afterwards. I cannot make promises that we can guarantee accommodations for families for childcare purposes, just because we really, I know that the principals and we really worked very hard to make attempts at balancing the schedules so that we would have no more than 10 to 12 students in a classroom, so they could be socially distanced. You know, a couple of requests can throw that balance off pretty quickly. But certainly if you wish to ask, you can ask, but I can't guarantee that we can honor that request.
Will extra masks be provided for students in case of a mishap?
Yes. We don't want students to be kicked out because they don't have a mask. We have extra masks. Yep.
How will we be addressing the music program?
The guidelines that we have right now are for that students not participate in woodwind or brass instruments that you would blow through. In addition, singing is certainly something that is not encouraged according to the most recent guidelines. So music instruction will be modified and will be less vocal music, and there will likely not be any instruments, you know, brass and woodwind instruments. We've talked to the music teachers about designing some kind of alternative activities, and there are other things that they'll focus on.
Are the common spaces and bathrooms being sanitized during the day?
Yes.
When will childcare information be released?
Friday, I'll be releasing A day, B day cohorts and information about how to contact the YMCA should you wish to investigate that for childcare.
How long do they have to stay home if they show any of the symptoms mentioned?
It depends on symptoms and or positive case. Let me see. 14 days is the general quarantine. Where did I? Okay, so reported symptoms with no known exposure to a confirmed case. So this is just symptoms. A student or faculty member with symptoms of COVID-19 will stay home for at least 10 days since their symptoms first appeared, and they have no fever for 24 hours. They may return earlier than 10 days if there's a negative diagnosis.
Before sending out an A and a B list, would it be possible to figure out who is going to be remote? Because that could change numbers drastically.
That's a good question, and that's possible. But remember, we've designed the A and B lists so that we could accommodate remote learners who may wish to come back. So just know that. So I understand the logic behind that question, but we have to also recognize that we need to have seats available for students who are remote and may wish to come back. That's why we designed the A-B lists first, and then we'll see how many parents are going to opt for remote, and we may be able to make accommodations after that. But remember, we have to allow parents who wish to send their children back the opportunity, so we can't move the classes around to remove a seat from a child who may be potentially virtual. Does that make sense, Robin? Are you with me?
Yeah, because we have to accommodate them should they come back. So
they come back, right? Yeah, we can't fill a class with 10 students expecting that the 3 virtual students will never come back. What if they come back? Then we have 13 in a class and they won't fit, so that we can be socially distanced.
Has there been consideration for creating a fully remote classroom for the families that do not plan to send their children?
It's been considered, but when we think about fully remote experiences, remember the guidance from the Department of Education says the fully remote experience has to mirror an in-person experience. So in thinking about that, I have to consider teacher certification to teach those students, right? Like, let's say we identify a teacher who wants to teach fully remote, and she's an 8th grade science teacher, and there are 12 kindergarten kids that want to be remote. So we have to think about teacher certification. We have to think about that teacher knowing all of those curriculum. And we also have to remember that we have to keep the program completely mirrored. And by doing this synchronous, asynchronous plan, we allow the remote students to mirror an in-person day so that we can comply with the guidelines as I read them from the Department of Education.
What is being done about classrooms with no windows?
So like I said in the presentation, we're adjusting the air intake from outside air. We're also adjusting the vents to make sure that the air flows either up or down, or purchasing diverters so that we're bringing in, so that the air is flowing up or down, not across surfaces. And remember, there's more outside air that's coming in. We're opening doors so more passive airflow from the hallways can come into those classrooms.
Yeah, now we're getting into a lot of doubles.
Okay.
Full times. Sorry, now I'm just trying to weed through.
Okay.
Protocol for bathroom trips. Number of students in and out monitored.
Yeah, so to the extent that we can, we'll have hall monitors, particularly at the middle school. Students will have to sign in and out so that we can monitor when they go to the bathroom and where.
Another question was about HSA events. Will you allow them to happen?
It depends on the event. We can't have any large events. So large, unless they're outside, right? And it all depends on the governor's orders. There will be no large inside events like assemblies. If they're outside events, we could certainly consider them as long as we follow the appropriate restrictions.
There was another one asking if parents would be able to receive a weekly curriculum of what the assignments are or what the schedule will be?
The schedule is likely not going to change, so the schedule will remain the same across the week. Are you meaning like a schedule, like I put a sample schedule for
Or-
September, or like what we're
I think it
covering?
I think it was more like a syllabus,
The lesson plan.
so that the parents can keep track of what the kids' assignments are for the week.
I think all of that is going to be posted in Google Classroom by the teacher, so the parents should be able to keep up with all of the assignments there. So there'll be two platforms, Google Classroom being one, and then remember we use Genesis for our grade book and for our final grades. So those are the two that parents should really be monitoring over the course of online instruction.
Thank you.
You're
How
welcome.
and when will Chromebooks be distributed?
We're looking at distributing Chromebooks before school starts, and we'll make an announcement so that they can be picked up in late August, so that parents can have them, get familiar with them. Students can become familiar with them before the school year actually starts.
A request to get required school supply list ASAP.
Like school supply list.
Yeah, what they will need.
Yeah. Just know, I know there's a shortage of a lot of hand sanitizer and things, but we'll put on the list, if parents can find it, start thinking about sending your child in with wipes and hand sanitizer and extra masks. Our school physician is recommending those gator masks. They're more comfortable for students. They don't go around their ears. It was very similar to the one that Jim Belsky was wearing.
Mhm.
I would recommend getting several masks that are comfortable for your child.
A lot of concerns about the inability for the virtual students to participate in the lesson and ask questions, or the time period that will go by in between when they will be in front of the teacher next.
I guess I would say to that Wednesdays are really going to be reserved for virtual students to meet in small group. They will have everyday access to all of those lessons. The lessons that are going to be live and synchronous, those are, that's the way we're going to continue to manage our virtual learners. There will be checks for understanding with the virtual learners, and I think that as the teachers become more and more comfortable with this format, we'll see some changes and some adjustments, but this is our jumping off point for right now. And remember, there's always those Wednesday small group and afternoons for office hours.
In the past, Chromebooks were allowed to be left at school. Obviously, they're going to have to go home this year. But then there was just a comment about making sure that those are charged up and ready to go each day,
Yep.
which is, I think, important to note because there will be limited charging space in school. Lockers, will students be using lockers?
No, we're going to have students carry all of their belongings.
Some questions we can't answer, like, will it be like this the whole year?
I wish I knew.
Fire drills, lockdown drills, things like that. How will they be handled?
There's some modifications there that the department has come out with. Our school safety specialists have those modifications. I can't speak to them right now. I'd have to find the file. I'll see if I can find it. And we can keep going. I will.
Okay.
At the Y. Our school safety specialists, I know, have the information provided to building principals and put it in Safe Schools for staff in regard to drills.
Okay. At the Y, will students be able to log into their remote learning? Will they be able to use their Chromebooks there?
If they're at the Y program, and will they be able to log into remote learning?
Yeah, at the Y, at a childcare program like that.
It depends on the location of the program. I mean, I don't know. I know that the Y is going to use their Deer Path facility. I believe it has Wi-Fi. I would say if they're going to a daycare facility, they bring their Chromebook so they can sit there with their earbuds in and they can be listening to the live lessons. I would check with your daycare facility to see if they have Wi-Fi.
IEP services, how they will be taking place. Actually, there was that about like pullouts for lots of things. So IEP services, will the teachers, will the professionals be coming to the students? Will the students be traveling to those service providers?
They may have to, just because of the nature of the service providers and the groups where they meet, right? So there's sometimes individual small group, and there might be equipment that those service providers need that are in their rooms. But remember, the service providers have those barriers.
Will staff be notified of furniture that needs to be removed before it's taken out? Many of us have supplied personal furniture and materials.
And nothing's going to be thrown away. When I talked to the facilities department, we talked about putting Post-it notes on everything so that you know what's going to need to come out. Yes.
Window blinds getting adjusted on a daily basis for the purpose of as much natural light in a classroom as benefiting students' well-being anytime through COVID. I think that's a suggestion to make sure that they're getting as much natural light into a classroom as possible.
Okay.
Will air filters in classrooms be upgraded?
I know we routinely change air filters. Our HVAC systems would not be able to, would not be operational with the level of air filters that's required to be like hospital grade to reduce viruses. So air filters are changed. They will not be upgraded to like hospital grade air filters because our HVAC system is unable to operate with those filters. MERV level 13, 14 filters would not allow our airflow to occur.
A request for kind of an FAQ document.
Yes, I've already started one.
Awesome.
Yes, started one.
Class assignments, will they be released any earlier this year?
Just like who your homeroom teacher is, we are planning on August 24th for that release to occur.
If a teacher has to quarantine, who is going to take over?
We're working with our substitutes right now to train them. In addition, if there is a quarantine, there may be a possibility that the entire class may have to go virtual for that 10 to 14 day period.
A question about cleaning supplies and what's being used. That's somewhere on our website, isn't it?
It is, and I think Jason can talk, I think he talked last week about it, and we can talk in more detail. So remember that the cleaning materials not only have to be cleaners, but they have to be disinfectants that kill viruses. So we have purchased those, and we recognize that we are a green district. So we're doing what we can to ensure that we purchase eco-friendly materials, but also materials that will certainly clean surfaces appropriately.
In regards to our water faucets and soap dispensers and paper towels, all of that, how about motion sensing to avoid more contact?
Say that one again.
In regards to water fountains, soap dispensers, paper towel dispensers, do we have motion sensing ones, or are we looking into them?
I do not believe we have them. I'll discuss with Jason. I don't believe we're looking into them. I have to look and see. I think I'd have to look and see if we have hand dryers in our bathrooms. Certainly we want students to be able to wash their hands. So we will have soap dispensers and, soap in them and towels and everything, because we want to certainly encourage hand washing. Certainly we can look into it and see what it would be to put touchless soap dispensers. Fire drills, just by the way, no fire drills until the public health emergency is lifted. So there will not be fire drills.
Anything in regards to the attendance policy? I know in years past that's been a bit of an issue, and this year it's probably going to be more of one.
Well, students who are absent from school, remember, will always have that virtual option, right? So even if you're absent, if you're not feeling well one day, remember, because we're encouraging you, we're saying keep your child home if they're showing signs and symptoms of illness, any illness, right? They'll always have the option, as long as they have their Chromebook or a device with them, to log into the lessons. So if they are there in the lessons and their attendance is recorded, their attendance is recorded. But students have to log into their lessons or come to school. That's how attendance is going to be recorded for this year.
Are there any remote options being offered for teachers who may be immunocompromised or have family members that are immunocompromised?
So when it comes to accommodations for the teachers and any medical issues that a teacher may have, so remember, teachers are going to bring their own mask. They will have, we're ordering more plexiglass barriers. We have face shields. Students will be 6 feet apart. If there's, and we have ordered a supply of N95 masks, which have certain requirements for someone to wear them for any extended period of time. So these are the universal PPE precautions that we have purchased for teachers. If there's anything above and beyond this, we would first look to provide that teacher with accommodations so that that teacher could return to work. If that teacher was unable to return to work because of a medical issue, there is availability of federal and or state entitlements where that teacher could apply for a leave if need be. We could also consider looking into options whether or not that teacher could teach remotely, but all of it has to happen on a case-by-case basis. So there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to accommodations for staff or leaves for staff or remote options for staff.
Can you adjust a child's schedule to allow for flexibility for those parents who also teach? I think maybe they want, maybe they're looking for like when work is due, or perhaps the attendance of those lessons. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
That was from Jamie V. If you wanted to put something in there that would confirm that a little bit more. Somebody said they wanted to confirm IEP students will be in school Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. That is just for the self-contained children.
That's
that is
correct.
not children with an IEP.
Not all children with an IEP, just children in our self-contained programs, and parents will receive that information from the Pupil Services Office.
How about picking up the first day of school supplies? I know they are ordered the year before, so that's through HSA. When will that take place?
I will have to get back to you on that, on picking up those materials. Ordinarily, they were before the first day of school. If so, what we'll have to do, or on the first day of school, so we'll have to perhaps have them available when we have the Chromebooks available. I could see that working well.
Will we be given a charger with the Chromebook? Yes, absolutely. Will parents also have access to tech support? Will they be taught how to use Google Classroom, etc.?
We have parent opportunity for learning that we're building into our plan.
weekly, this is back to the weekly curriculum. Saying questions should be revisited with teacher input. It's going to be impossible, especially with all new and changing, that every bit of instruction laid out on Google Classroom in advance and available to parents. There's a curriculum and scope and sequence posted on the district website. There will need to be flexibility and understanding for teachers who are changing the way that they're used to teaching. Perhaps this is, again, sort of like Anna was saying, like a weekly syllabus, something so that parents would know what's going on in the classroom that week, so that they could help at home.
Right, understood. And I do believe that can be accomplished through Google Classroom, but certainly something to consider. Roman, I'm trying to keep up with you.
Yeah, I know. I'm almost at the bottom, I think. If we're not satisfied with the answers, can we contact Dr. Hart? Yes, absolutely. Send your concerns to Dr. Hart. This is above my scientific grade. So if we can't accommodate MERV 1314, how do we know if the adequate level of infectious particles are filtered out of the classrooms? I'm sure that's something to do with the filtration in the rooms and the masks. Still a lot of confusion about the virtual learners and not being able to participate in the classroom.
Help me out, Roman.
Yeah, it's again, I think people just want the students who are home to be able to participate, but it's through the platform it's not possible. They can type in questions and they can be addressed later by the teacher. But in the actual lesson itself, they're not able to ask a question during the lesson. It would have to be something that's typed in and addressed later on.
So yeah, so remember that there's going to be an adjustment period. Remember the idea is that the teacher is going to be presenting some direct instruction, and of course there would be some sort of check for understanding, right, before they're off to do their independent work. So it's not like they would have no interaction. It's just that they would be listening and watching to the teacher modeling portion of the lesson. That's the part that would be the direct instruction portion. And then remember, you know, when students are not virtual, they'll be back in the classroom with some guidance and support from the teacher.
Can I say something? Am I allowed? I'm a teacher. My name is Cheryl.
Sure.
Hi, Cheryl.
I was just trying to get through the questions first. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. The only thing I was going to say is if we have a Zoom meeting on our computer, okay,
Right.
unless I'm wrong, and I move my computer up in front of my smart board, and my remote kids are at home on the Zoom meeting while my other kids are in the classroom, and they're looking at my smart board and my Zoom meeting is on, this is the only way I know how to do it. Why can't they talk to me? I don't see them not being able to participate in the discussion. So that's the way I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
I keep asking the question, Dr. Hart. It's Jessica Lestuk. You know, Cheryl, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think if we're trying to develop a program that is supposed to basically mirror what the child is getting as far as in-school instruction, I think it's so important for those kids who are home to be able to participate, you know, to ask a question or to answer a question. So Cheryl, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking back to how things were done in March when we went remote and we had those Zoom meetings and the kids were able to participate back and forth with the teacher and have that open dialogue and feel like even though they were home, they were still part of a classroom. And I really, really hope that it's going to be the same for this upcoming school year. So Cheryl, thank you.
Okay, sorry, goodbye.
Yeah, no, Cheryl, I understand. I got you. I know what you mean, but I also know that it may look a little bit different every teacher's classroom, right? Like,
Oh,
so
it's
it may
gonna be
look a little
ugly.
different.
It's gonna be
Right.
ugly, but it'll get done.
Yeah.
Dr. Hart, this is Kevin Meyer.
Hey, Kevin.
I'm thinking that if we refer back to the part of your presentation where Jim Belsky was modeling what instruction may look like, there was verbal interaction between you and Jim while he was presenting. So students will have that opportunity, in my opinion. Do I think it's going to be seamless and without, disruption? Absolutely not. But I would envision that it's just like a classroom full of students that, someone has to raise their hand and indicate that they have a question and is going to wait, need to wait to be called on. That can happen in the chat if teachers are monitoring chat, and that can happen if the student calls out and speaks when there's a lull in the teacher's presentation. Again, I don't think it's going to be perfect and seamless, and I think everyone's going to have to adjust to it. But teachers are going to do our best. If this is how we're going to be required to teach and educate children, we're going to continue to do our best to interact with them the best that we can. But, mirroring the state's idea in mind of mirroring those two platforms at the same time in September is, quite frankly, not realistic. Will it get closer to being a better mirror image? Yes. But if anyone has the expectation that it's going to look like that on September 3 and 4, then they need a reality check. But we're going to work hard.
Right, Kevin. And I understand what you mean. And I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, if I didn't clarify. I didn't mean to imply that there would be no interaction from the students at home, that they would simply be passive watchers, right, of instruction. It's not going to be like that, right?
Certainly, and I understood that, and I wanted to make sure that I was reinforcing that from a teacher's perspective.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And this is Colleen Ogden on that exact same topic. The question that kind of is coming up, I saw several times, is do the children who are home, do they have to log off after 20 minutes? Or can I, if I teach math for an hour, let's say, can I keep those remote kids with me for an hour? And then everybody goes back to their section and does some questions. And then 7 minutes later, after independent work in 7 minutes, I'm going to ask the people at home, let me see your answers. Or maybe I do that every 2 minutes. I mean, is it limited to 20 minutes and then they go on their way? Or can we extend that time for however long my class period is?
You can certainly extend it, and I think I said that can be extended, and that could certainly fluctuate. That amount of time could certainly fluctuate. I would just, say that we just have to be mindful of how much time, during the academic day that students are going to be involved in participating in online lessons, with some break to do their independent work or go off and do their assignment, right? That's all. But yeah, you can certainly extend it. It doesn't have to be 15 or 20 minutes. A lesson doesn't have to just be limited to that 15 or 20 minutes.
Excellent, thank you.
I think the concern was that there was going to be kids who were literally on their computer for the entire time. So this was designed more to give them a break should they need it, and be able to do their work independently and not be staring at a screen for an entire day.
Right.
Am I able to clarify one of the questions that I had?
Sure.
Okay, my name is Katie Parcells. I have a son, Aiden, who's going into kindergarten in September, and I'm also a teacher, and my husband works in a school. So when I have been referencing logging on to virtual lessons from the childcare, I'm not talking about a general childcare or daycare setting. I'm talking more about the Y program that you mentioned would be happening within White House School. If my son is at that, let's just say, for example, he's in cohort A. So he goes to White House School on Monday and Tuesday. So on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, when I'm at work, but he's at White House School within the Y program during school hours, if the lessons are not being recorded, how is he going to access those lessons? Is he going to be able to access them from the program offered within the school?
So a couple of things. First, let me first say that if we are able to offer a YMCA all-day program in our district, it may only be one building, and it may not necessarily be White House School. So your child may not attend a Y facility in his or her school. They may be attending it in a different school. We may only have enough room to open up one. So that's number one. Number two, we're simply the conduit to offer the YMCA program. So we're simply allowing the Y to use our facility. And our facility does have Wi-Fi access. it's going to be up to the staff members at the YMCA to assist him with logging on to his program or his academics for the day. Our staff will not be there to do that. So I would check or talk with your daycare or talk with the YMCA about how that might work on those days, so that they recognize that there are children that might need some additional assistance. But our staff will not be there. That is completely up to the Y. All we're doing, we're simply providing a facility for the Y to use. We are not running the program at all. We're just providing the facility.
Okay, thank you. So would there be any way then that lessons can be recorded that way, that like if he's at the Y program and I'm at work, obviously he's not getting the instruction on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday when he's not physically in school. So I would have to do that work with him when I get home in the evening. But if the lessons aren't recorded, then I'm unable to do that.
Right, so right now we're not talking about actually recording lessons and posting them, because part of the initiative that we want to have as a school district is have students follow a typical schedule and have lessons be live and synchronous at the same time, so that they get the benefit of that learning. That's our goal, right? That's our instructional purpose, is to provide that consistent instruction so that the students participate in the instruction live, have the benefit of the teacher, the benefit of that assistance, and then follow up with the teacher on either a Wednesday or when they come into school on A or B day.
So how does that work for two parent working families? Families where both parents work.
So I would say that daycare facility, you talk to the daycare facility about assisting your child with getting onto the computer so that he can participate in those live lessons.
Yeah, I know I'm not the only person with this question. I've been seeing it all over social media, people panicking, who the mom and dad, they both work, and how is this going to work? So it just seems like an equity problem to me, that if the daycare is unable to log them on, or if the childcare is unable to log them on, if lessons are not recorded, then those students are missing 3 out of 5 days a week of instruction. And that's a huge problem.
I understand. I understand.
So while synchronous learning and creating a schedule for children who have stay-at-home parents or parents who are working from home works, it doesn't work for children whose both parents work outside of the home. I would strongly reconsider your model of not recording lessons.
Thank you. I appreciate your thoughts and your feedback. I do. Thanks.
Sure. And I see a lot of people thanking me in the comments. So I'm sorry if I'm coming across strong, but I have to advocate for my child. And clearly, by the people saying thank you, thank you, thank you in the comments, I am not the only person that feels this way.
Yeah, no, I understand. I do. I understand. Remember that we went into this with our committees with the goal of providing a consistent daily schedule for students, and that was our goal, so that we could mirror the best we can what in-class instruction would look like for students at home. So it's certainly consideration. I appreciate that, and I appreciate those thoughts. Definitely.
Thank you. As a teacher, I'm going to be providing my own students with education, and I need to be able to provide that same education to my own child. And if 3 out of 5 days a week lessons he's missing, that is not equity. Thank you.
Dr. Hart, this is Stephanie Preston. Again, sorry, going back to virtual, because my kids will not be in school at any point. But my question is, so is it really going to be up to the teacher virtually if they, keep them on and, are able to respond to questions they have during the lesson? Or are you like mandating a certain way for the teachers to handle the classrooms?
So I think what you heard from the, from the teachers, that that instructionally they understand the direction that they've been given and understand that they can simultaneously, and Kevin and Cheryl certainly weigh in, simultaneously, manage interacting with the students who are virtual as well as students who are in their classroom, although it'll look different and it'll take some time in practice, that they're able to do it, and that it's going to be something that is certainly going to be possible throughout virtual learning or this hybrid learning model.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Dr. Hart,
Yes.
this is Gargi. Can you
Hi,
hear me?
Gargi. I can hear
Hi.
you.
Yes.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm a teacher. If anybody needs to know, I'm a teacher, special education teacher at Hollenbrook School. Dr. Hart, I just had hearing all this and thinking of my room at Hollenbrook School, and I know you address the HVAC outside air more coming in. My room has no windows. It's a tiny space, and I'm sure my building principal will take care of me on that. But the major thing that I am concerned, rather have a question as a teacher who is advocating for my students in my classroom, and I don't know if I speak for every resource room. I do pull out teaching, and I do in-class instruction as well, like a co-teaching model. So when I'm pulling kids out in my classroom, and I am not sure yet if all my parents will opt for virtual or be the AB model in my classroom. So when I'm modeling, and then I go for a check for understanding and phase, and then the independent teaching, my kids in the virtual setting could be at a daycare center, could be at home with a trusted adult. I'm thinking, parents, grandparents, whoever might be. And then, in my rooms, in my rooms and my experience in teaching, when I model, I also have to monitor the social emotional health of every kid in my classroom. So sometimes I'm monitoring that, so I know learning is happening. Sometimes I have to address it if a kid is breaking apart. And with the whole teaching being virtual, I feel like I'm exposing the privacy of kids to homes and to public places, which I am concerned about. And I don't know if I should privately address this with you, or or my building principal, or even my supervisor, Stacy Beagle, because with the learning in my room, and I can assure you, every resource room, we have to address the social emotional part very, very heavily. There's a reason why they are in pull out rooms, not because they are less intelligent. They need a specific way of learning. And to provide that, we have to constantly monitor their emotional health. Either it could be via a chart, or through talking, or through, peace corners, what have you. But I just feel like with the virtual part running in parallel, I feel like I'm going to expose their privacy. And as a teacher, I'm the biggest advocate for them in my classroom when they're under my watch. And I just have a concern about that. And my second was, how are we doing science learning? With the experiments and everything, with the virtual, people, when I co-teach with my teacher, how are we doing the science learning? That part was not clear to me because, I'm kind of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Gargi. I appreciate it. Your first question in regard to addressing student social emotional needs when they're in the classroom, but you're also broadcasting live. Certainly something definitely to talk with your building principal about further, but a suggestion that I would have for teachers is, remember, on your Google Meets or your Zooms, if you know that you need to address a situation, I see it being very possible for you to tell virtual students that you'll be right back, and you can mute your device, and you can turn your camera off at any time So if you need to talk to a student about something that's related to a social emotional needs, then you can have some privacy. And then in regard to science learning, remember, there are students who will be learning virtually and there are students who will be learning in class. I would say for any hands-on activities, remember we're not really using many materials and apparatuses because of potential transmission, but to the extent that you can do a live experiment or a demonstration, you can do the demonstration virtually from your classroom and do it as a demonstration rather than a hands-on experiment. Or you can do the experiments if you want students involved on the A/B days when students are actually live in person, and be able to show the virtual students at home who are fully virtual, some of the work that the students in the class are doing. It's just a suggestion. I'm sure that the science supervisor might have other suggestions, but just some ideas for you to think about. I hope that's helpful for you, just to give you some initial thinking.
Thank you, Dr. Hart.
You're certainly welcome. I want to go back. Mr. Quintard is talking about airflow. Jason, if you're on, the specific question is about an inventory of airflow through the building and sufficient ventilation. And I need more details about if we've done an inventory, and if we have, what it looked like. If we have not, is there anything that we have done as far as airflow in the building thus far in order to plan for the fall?
So that came up during our reopening restart committees. There was many different options discussed, such as putting UVC lighting in the ductwork or in the HVAC systems themselves. Dr. Hart touched based on MERV filters. We talked about passive versus active, doing and talking to consultants and experts about airflow in the building, rooms that have exterior windows versus rooms that don't, as well as HVAC units that are within the rooms themselves versus ones that are on top of the building that service multiple different rooms. We do have an inventory of which HVAC units go to which rooms and have airflow going to specific rooms, because there is shared airflow between certain groups of rooms in certain cases. There's also airflow that is directly individualized to individual rooms. There's also a lot of different air units and air handlers. There's a variety of different ones throughout the building. They're different make, models, and capacities. But in that sense, to address the question whether a detailed plan of airflow by each classroom and air handler has been done, the short answer to that would be no. We have talked to our architects. We have also talked to our engineers regarding our HVAC capabilities. We've reviewed our plans that we have for the building schematics. We've reviewed each classroom individually to determine what modifications we could make to best reduce any active airflow in those rooms, such as removing fans, removing air dryers, increasing HVAC settings to increase outside airflow. Unfortunately, MERV rated filters of 13 or higher are not possible with our air handlers, which also sometimes are referred to as HEPA. It would create an unhealthy situation both for the classroom environment as well as for the unit itself. But we are taking as many precautions as we can to increase passive outdoor airflow into the building and into the classrooms, and reduce active airflow between students that are sitting 6 feet and less from the ground. Realize that students and staff will be 6 feet apart in the classroom. there is a designated area in each classroom marked for teaching staff to move around in. That will be 6 feet minimum from the first student desk. And at all times, students will be wearing face masks unless they are instructed to take them off. We also have plexiglass barriers as well as face shields for staff members and other accommodations we can make. So with all of those precautions taken in aggregate, we've done everything we possibly can without undertaking a major capital expenditure, which is not feasible to do mid-year based on New Jersey state regulations. So I don't know if that answers your question in full, but I am available to speak individually by contacting me via email or by phone.
And it sounds like the question was about measuring actual airflow output, and it sounds like the answer to the question is no, there hasn't been a measure of output rate, correct? But if there's something more specific, we can certainly, Mr. Quintard can email you.
Correct. And we are required to have a certain percentage of outside airflow into the building. And our facilities department monitors that in each HVAC system individually. And that is required by the state. And we do that each and every year, but we are going to increase that capacity.
Yeah. And Mr. Quintard's main point seems to be as if we don't want to make an assumption about the efficiency of it. We just want to ensure that we measure the actual output, like you're talking about, monitoring it with our maintenance staff to ensure that it's functioning properly, that it's actually bringing in the percentage of outside air that we anticipate, and using the air, circulating the air as appropriate. And it sounds like we do that at least with our own maintenance staff to ensure that it's working properly. Yeah. Okay. There was somebody had asked a question about, the younger children. I think this was Mr. Wolf's question, for their social emotional well-being, and making sure that we encourage in this new environment, social emotional well-being. So Mr. Tumalo has helped us by putting in an SEL integration overview of things that can happen at home, things that can happen at school, and things that can happen virtually on Wednesday. Everybody, just make sure you're on mute.
I'm listening to what's going to happen for our kid.
Make sure you're on mute. Thank you. So we are integrating things like establishing routines and expectations, integrating brain breaks throughout the day, reinforcing affirmations, doing morning meetings and afternoon meetings, certainly with social distancing. We certainly aren't going to be able to really exchange handshakes and things like that anymore. The school counselors have been working with Mr. Tumalo about a daily mental health check-in, just to see how students are doing each day, because we recognize that this can be a really challenging situation. Building classroom community through activities, discussions, sharing, games, read-alouds. So these are some of the things that we're doing to support, the emotional well-being of students. To the extent possible in this environment that really is, quite a challenge for us. We'll do our best to try to create an environment where students can somehow play or engage, in activities, but do it socially distanced. Our students were really creative in coming up with ideas that can happen outside where they can still play games, but also maintain social distancing when we met in our student focus group. I'm going to come up with some of the ideas that we have taken down. Students talked about games like Simon Says, Freeze Dance, Red Light, Green Light, doing soccer passing with feet only. We have a lot of yoga in our district, and some of our teachers are even trained or well aware and practice yoga, playing charades, I Spy games, relay races. They could have special days like bring your own jump rope to do jump rope activities, those sorts of things. So those are the kinds of lists that we're developing, even in collaboration with our students. So that, because our students are really great at coming up with, ideas for themselves. All right. Robin, I don't know where you left off, and I tried to, kind of pick up where you left off.
Yeah, I read through some of them to make sure that we had at least hit on points. The only one that I didn't see addressed at all was in regards to vacations and times off, and when we know that lots more people will be traveling. Like, have we thought about more virtual either before or after a break, or what we're going to do to ensure safety of people after they've traveled?
Mm-hmm. There are some travel restrictions right now that the governor has placed. There's a website that he has that we can continue to monitor to see which states are on the travel restriction list. Know that if you have to be quarantined, remember the beauty of having a program like what we've designed would potentially allow a student who maybe has traveled to participate virtually if he needed to, if there was a travel restriction in the state where that student may have traveled. So part of the benefit of the program that we're proposing here to the Board of Ed is the fact that the program allows for flexibility for parents or students to be completely virtual if need be. So if you do travel to a state that is on the travel restriction list, please, follow the restrictions that the governor has posted, and keep your family quarantined for the designated amount of time.
Robin, did we hit most of them?
I believe so, and I apologize if I didn't. There were some things about special ed and IEP, and our case manager is going to be reaching out to students with plans. They will, as they always have. And again, the students who are going to be in school 4 days a week, they will be notified directly.
Right. And case managers will reach out to you as they ordinarily have. If you have some sort of concern, please contact the Pupil Services Office or your child's case manager.
Okay, I think and if you have specific questions, that would be the time to email the principals as well as Dr. Hart to have those answered. Specific about your child won't necessarily be appropriate to be answered on this forum.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
I just have one more question about the teacher. I know this is really not, sorry, this is Stephanie Preston again. I know this isn't, this is out of all of your hands, and I do appreciate, just like everybody, you guys have gone through to put something together. I know it's impossible, but when they do, only because I have teachers in my family as well, should they get, they come in and they teach, and should they have to, quarantine, or should they get ill? Are we taking care of them? I mean, they're not asking, obviously, to be put into a situation like this. And I do know that, being teachers, and they don't always get the best of, vacations and health and all of that kind of stuff. I want to, just kind of check and make sure that we're taking care of, our teachers and our administrators who are putting themselves out on the line, for our kids, and it's kind of out of their control too. That should they get sick, should they, have to quarantine, that they're not having to use, personal time. They're not, do you, I'm probably overstepping.
Yeah. No, I certainly understand what you mean. I mean, this is Ms. Preston, this is a challenging situation. It really is. And we are persevering and coming up with the best plan that we possibly can that protects the safety of all, right? Including our teachers. And we love our teachers, and we admire the hard work that they have done and that they will do come the fall. So, and I guess to answer your question more specifically, right? If there's a need be for quarantine or something like that, there are specific leave entitlements where teachers would be able to quarantine and use those emergency sick days that are provided by the state so that they don't have to use their individual sick days. And it depends on the case and the scenario. There could be an opportunity where even if a staff member has to quarantine, they may offer to the principal or to me to say, look, I can handle doing this fully remotely. I can do that. So I think that, and I've said it before, everything has to be handled on a case-by-case basis. Not that we're ill prepared, because we're prepared. It's just that to think of all of the what ifs and every different permutation of which teacher and when and how long and who's affected is going to need to be a decision that's made, at specific times with specific staff in the specific scenario. But I don't know. I'd like to think that I'm trying and that we're really trying to be cognizant and thinking about the needs of the teachers. And I mentioned earlier, I met with them yesterday, and after hearing some of the things that we've said, I talked with Jason earlier today about ordering more plexiglass barriers and more PPE and N95 masks, just in case they're needed or in case they're requested as an accommodation. And doing those things, I think, is we're doing our best. And we're putting our best effort in to protect the safety of all. So I thank you for your comments, and I thank everybody for your comments and your patience and your thoughts.
Dr. Hart, this is
Yes.
Kevin Meyer. I just want to make it clear to address that question that those government days that are given through the CARES Act, I believe, or it might be
the emergency. Yep.
Yes, that's 10 days.
Yeah.
So that would quantify one instance of quarantining.
Yes.
And thereafter, it will affect teachers' personal days and accumulated sick time.
Right.
So it is something that we'll have to consider on a case-by-case basis and work with the administration to address. But that it would only be those 10 days, and then we would have to collectively come up with another solution.
Right, which we've talked about, and we know that there's some flexibility that we can offer there. And I even mentioned just a moment ago, like there's a possibility that if a teacher could work, remotely and still be able to attend to his or her duties, that would be an option that's on the table. So,
of course, most certainly. I just want to make sure that it was clear to the person asking that question that it was 10 days set aside that don't affect the personal bank of days that teachers have accrued.
Yep. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right, we ready to move on? I feel like we've exhausted it. We're starting to repeat some of the questions. So I apologize if I am cutting anyone off.
No apology necessary. I could use a little water break. I'll do that right now.
Perfect. All right. So moving on. We had correspondence from a parent about the upcoming school year. Administrative reports. We have a finance and facilities. Can I have a motion to adopt 3.01 to 3.03, please?
Ray, so moved.
Carol, second.
Thank you. We have a committee report for finance and facilities.
We do. Let me pull it up. It's basically a short meeting. Basically, the bulk of the meeting was just, we met on Thursday, July 23rd. The bulk of the meeting was about reopening, and we reviewed and discussed the presentation and plan draft as it related to finance and facilities as it was presented tonight. The committee reviewed and discussed the cafeteria and classroom layout, the technology, Chromebook insurance. There was no discussion due to time constraints. There was next steps, sharing the plans with RTEA and sharing with full staff. And then finance agenda items, the committee discussed the RMS well remediation efforts for the recent E. coli problem, and no recommendation currently. The next meeting scheduled for August 4th. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns on 3.01 to 3.03? Okay, not hearing any. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ray Egbert? Yes. Carol Hampel?
Yes.
Ron McKalen?
Yes.
Carolyn Pogorski?
Yes.
Andrew Saunders? Thomas Wallace?
Yes.
Eric Zwirling?
Yes.
Hannah Shen?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay. Education technology, we just have a committee report for this.
Okay. So the committee met on July 23rd. Again, we reviewed the presentation draft, so I'm not going to go through all of those minutes. We did talk about if we're required to go fully virtual, that there are plans in place to teach the students in the first weeks of school how to use Smart Suite and other software tools to share screens to be more interactive. There will be pre-assessments done in the beginning of the school year to understand what gaps in education there may be from last year to this year. Lessons to address those gaps would be tailored as needed, and intervention programs will continue. Teacher training will occur on September 1st and 2nd and include guidelines on what a school day will look like. We reviewed student expectations through the different age groups. And I think, let's see, so technology, the Chromebook insurance, because all devices are going to be going home, the $25 insurance that normally only applies for the middle school students will apply to all students K through 8. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions from the board about that? Okay. Mr. Boehm, I don't have a roll call on my agenda for that. Do we need to?
No
Okay.
action.
Thank you. Next, we have communication. Can I have a motion to adopt 6.01?
So moved, Tom.
Second, Ray.
Okay. We have a committee report?
No, we don't have a new one.
Okay. Any questions or concerns on 6.01? Not hearing any. Roll call, please.
Ray Egbert,
Yes.
Carol Hampel,
Yes.
Ron McKalen,
Yes.
Carolyn Pogorski,
Yes.
Thomas Wallace,
Yes.
Eric's Rolling,
Yes.
Anna Shin,
Yes.
passes.
Unfinished business? Do we have any? No. Any new business from the board? Okay, we are once again open to the public. Anything on or off the agenda? Not hearing any. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Ray.
Second, Carol.
Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Ray Egbert,
Yes.
Carol Hampel,
Yes.
Ron McKalen,
Yes.
Carolyn Pogorski,
Yes.
Thomas Wallace,
Yes.
Eric's Rolling,
Yes.
Anna Shin.
And yes. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Thank you, board members.
Have a great night.
Have a good
Good
night.
night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.